And welcome back to the second episode of this RWBY fanfiction reading. The second episode of RoRaWoK. Yeah. So, just whatever. um, so we did the first two chapters of the story in the first episode, and now I hope to get two or more chapters done in this, so that we can continue on and hopefully not make this super ridiculously long. So Chapter 3, California Dreamin'. When Blake got back to her dorm room, she was exhausted, but in the best way possible. She was still trying to get over a few things. Yang still liked her. One, Yang still liked her. Two, they told each other they still had feelings for each other with Pride and Prejudice quotes. Three, Yang hadn't seen the BBC movie, or read the book, or watched the Lizzie Bennet diaries. However, Blake was willing to forgive her since she'd been doing a lot of other reading, though she still intended to rectify this as soon as possible. 4. Yang still liked her. She'd started to tidy up a bit. She'd left the room in a bit of a mess when she'd gone out, with serial killers and whatnot on the forefront of her mind at that point. Pyrrha was sitting at her desk, back turned. Hey, the faunus replied, shaking out a coat that had been draped over the end of the bed. How was the movie? Really good. How's your essay going? All right, slowly. Blake rolled her eyes. By that, she probably meant she'd finished her first draft, but it wasn't due for a week or two. Pierre paused, then asked, "Who sent the tickets?" The faunus couldn't stop herself from grinning. Yang. Or, probably more likely. Really? She's back? She nodded. I think she's been around for a few weeks. Is she at Beacon again? No, she's doing an apprenticeship. I don't think they'd let her in if she tried. He grimaced. That's probably true. You should bring her over sometime. It'd be good to see her again. Blake grinned, tossing a pair of minty wrappers in the bin. You have no idea. For Weiss, the train ride home from Beacon was always long. Her family lived in Atlas. The military mining city was north of Vale, and many people had commuted between them, alongside Mistral and Vacuo. Atlas was where she went to school, where Winter went to uni, and her father went to work. Of the three of them, Weiss went to Vale most often. She badly wanted to go to Beacon once she graduated. If it weren't for Winter's quiet, steady support, their father would have squashed the idea long before now. But Weiss was stubborn. She got a job at the White Stag as an excuse to go out there and see the campus each week. But the train ride home was the worst. She gazed out the window, a small smile on her lips. Her thoughts still filled with RWBY, adjusted the collar of her shirt, and crossed one leg over the other, leaning her head against the side of the train, folding her arms in her lap. That sentence was too long. The rain from before had quickly escalated into a full-blown storm. She'd ridden her bike to the train station and had become drenched in the process. Her hair was plastered to her face, ponytail dripping with water. As night approached, chances were it would only get worse. Looking outside, she couldn't really see the rain, but she could see the leaves on trees, dipping as raindrops hit them, then slid off onto it. Onto just onto the pavement below. When she arrived home, it was the same thing every day. She called out to let her dad know she was there, checked the hall stand to see if Winter had hung up her coat, indicating that she was home, which she had, and then went upstairs to her room. Unsurprisingly enough, their house was rather large. 4 bedrooms, 3 of which were with walk-in wardrobes, 3 bathrooms, including one ensuite in their father's room, a large sitting room and kitchen, a dining area, and a large room out of the front to entertain guests, and a garage with 2 car spots. Though she had become old enough, her dad didn't want her. But she'd suddenly become busy with a trio of courses she was taking over the summer. Weiss was getting really impatient, but it wasn't too bad, since she didn't feel like all her friends were already driving, because she didn't have any close friends besides RWBY and Winter, which was worse. But never mind. That was a lot of There's a lot of like parentheses, like text there. It's longer than the rest of the paragraph. All right. She slipped past her father's study, darting carefully around the creaky floorboard near the door, slipped into her room, and hung up her coat. The upstairs part of the house was really an attic converted into actual rooms. Hence, Weiss's room had the sloping roof and a square window, about as wide as the door. She often sat up there on the windowsill, curled up, her back against the wall, pulling the curtain across and looking outside when she wanted to get away from things, to forget everyone's expectations and the expectations she had for herself. But recently she'd learned to do that with her knock on her door, even though she'd left it open. It was winter. May I come in? Sure. Her incredibly tall older sister slipped through the doorway and shut it behind them. Are you okay? Huh, yeah, I'm fine. You went to Vale again. So? Winter shrugged. Dads won't be happy. Is he ever happy? Okay, good point, she conceded, narrowing her eyes. It's just that you usually go to Vale for your job, or if something's wrong. So what's wrong? Weiss shrugged. I just went to see a movie with a friend. She lives in Vale, eh, and I don't mind catching the train. Who's the friend? Her name's RWBY. I met her at the White Stag. A smile played on the corner of her sister's lips. That's good. It's good that you have friends. She nodded. But what if you knew exactly what she was? Yeah, she's nice. Winter shrugged. Anyway, I think you should talk to Dad. He realized you were gone about an hour ago. Weiss only just held back a groan, getting up off her bed. Winter shrugged and Winter sighed and headed to their father's office. Weiss followed reluctantly. Their father wasn't a bad man. He and Weiss just had conflicting ideas about the way the world should work and how much freedom she should have to make her own choices. He was sitting at his desk, Excel open on his computer, a Mac. All right, way to use Microsoft Excel on an Apple product. Good job. The entire family had Apple products. He turned around as the sisters came into the room. Winter wandered deeper into the room, leaning on the edge of the desk. Weiss is back. I noticed. Weiss bit her lip. Sorry. He turned around. What for? I went to Vale. Their father sighed, closing his eyes. You know you're meant to ask me before you do that. I know. What did you do? Saw a movie with a friend. He paused. What friend? She's called Ruby. She's a regular customer at the White Stag. She nearly added the part about her usual order, but didn't think he'd be too impressed with the white rose tea thing. He paused and his gaze softened. How was the movie? He asked, putting down his cup of coffee, dropping his shoulders a little, the kindness in his eyes surprising Weiss. She felt a prick of guilt. Maybe I've been too hard on him recently. Fine, a little predictable. We went to that comic book store afterwards. He frowned. Comic books? Oh, it lines up more with Ruby's interests. Your father nodded, and did you have a good time? Yes, I did, he sighed. That's good. I just wish you would be equally satisfied in Atlas, Weiss. You know that. I know, but I like Vale too. I understand that, he repeated steadily, his tone of voice a little harder, more solid. Have you thought about who you're going to invite to the masquerade? The Schnee family held a masquerade every autumn equinox to celebrate the Vital Festival. 40 years ago, around this time of year, a war that had gone on for at least 10 years between humans and faunas ended. And though society was far from achieving equality, they still celebrated the lack of large-scale bloodshed and posing the Schnees were permanently pitted against the Faunus in their own way. Only humans were really invited to their home, so their party was simply a masquerade with people wearing animal masks rather than including Faunus hiding their heritage and occasionally turning off the lights, mocking the humans as they stumbled around in the dark, stealing food off people's plates is a bit of harmless fun. Sure. The reason why the autumn equinox specifically had been chosen, however, was that the night and day were equal. The day was about striving towards equality, something that Weiss and Winter's father was really struggling with, and that Weiss intended to fix as soon as she was old enough to make some changes in the way their company operated. Weiss paused. No, but I think I can think of a few people. Winter's eyebrows shot up. A few? I thought you only had one friend now. Their father looked equally surprised, and Weiss grinned. Why is everyone so surprised that I have friends? He sighed. I'm sorry, Weiss. This is quite new, though, isn't it? I guess. Who are they? Weiss swallowed. I work with at the White Stag. Blake, or at the White Stag. Blake. She and Yang know each other, and they're the kind of people we want here. Weiss hesitated, thinking of Ruby's clumsiness and inability to read the atmosphere, Blake's extreme introversion and faunus heritage, Yang's, well, the length of Yang's shorts and the very scooped neckline of his shirt, not to mention all the gayness. She must have made a face because Winter raised an eyebrow. Well, she swallowed. I'll keep them in line. Her father narrowed his eyes. You better, he said taking another sip of his coffee. Of course, is that all? Winter rolled her eyes and their father sighed. I was hoping we could have a conversation for once. Weiss's heart sank. Aren't you busy? Her father closed his eyes. Winter, leave us. The elder sister paused, glanced at the pair of them, and strode from the room. Weiss bit her. Sorry, he murmured. I haven't been listening to you. Sometimes I feel like I hardly know you, Weiss. Weiss paused. It's okay, I'm okay. I just try to do what's best for you. Her gaze hardened. I know, but sometimes I know what's best for me more than anyone else. He studied her carefully. You're so like your mother, you know. That voice of yours, hers was the same. Weiss glanced at her feet, not sure how to respond. He blinked, then waved his hand dismissively. You don't want to be here. Go and do something useful. Weiss felt the tension in her chest release itself, flooding with relief. Okay, what time will dinner be? 6:30. She nodded and slipped back out of the room, nearly jumping in surprise to see Weiss just around the corner. Winter just around the corner. What? You weren't eavesdropping, were you? He just wants to get close to you again, she replied, evading Weiss's question. Whatever. The last thing she needed was her sister doing the same thing. I'm going to make some tea. I'm dying. Winter frowned. Aren't you a coffee person? Ruby introduced me to rose tea, and it's really nice, she replied, and less caffeine, too. All right, don't let me stop you. I'll be in my room. Weiss nodded, pausing before going down the stairs. Would you like me to get you anything? I'm fine. The junior year student nodded and ducked downstairs, making for the kitchen. The entire house, which had been renovated recently, was incredibly modern and streamlined. But Weiss said picked a couple of items that sticked out a bit. The most recent one she'd found, walking with Ruby the week before, was a bright coppery-colored vintage kettle. She filled it with water and plugged it into the power, switching it on. She made a habit of and Ruby confessed the way they'd felt. After about a minute, while the water boiled, she found a mug. She preferred drinking this kind of tea from a mug. She wasn't sure why. It felt more cozy. She grabbed a tea bag of rose tea from the same box that had fallen on the floor back in the White Stag. She felt so bad about serving people tea that had been on the floor, she'd gone to buy some to replace it, taking the old box home. She poured in the water and then the dash of milk that made it special to the pair of them, Ruby and Weiss. She closed her eyes, breathing in the tea's sweet scent. This friendship with Ruby would be tough to manage. Everything about it was so different to the rest of the family. Where they conformed, Weiss rebelled, defying society's expectations and maybe even human nature itself. Where her family was a little uptight and very proper, Ruby was carefree and awkward, and Weiss had no idea where any of this would end up leading. But she wouldn't have it any other way. Chapter ready, please. Chapter 4, Dancing Through Life. Okay, let's move past the author. Shut up. Let's move past the author's note. The White Stag had been unusually quiet today. Blake and Weiss were getting ready to hand over to Gwen and Nebula. The writer, who never said a word besides her order, was in the corner typing away, glancing up from her computer every so often to survey her surroundings or look out the window. Was basically the only person here who wasn't waiting for a takeaway order. Emerald said she'd tried to have a conversation with her previously, but her answers, though not unkind, were short and I don't actually know how to say that word. Isn't it like, it's like brusque? I mean, it's technically, but I don't know. Emerald was a strange sort of character. Her past was implied to be interesting, but somehow she'd ended up in charge of a coffee shop. She didn't actually show up much. Money was transferred into their bank accounts at the end of each day. It wasn't terribly uncommon for this to happen at 1 a.m. In the early hours of the morning, she'd bring in all of the baked goods for the day, place them in the middle of the room in a pair of crates, then leave. Every employee knew how to contact her if a fire started or something, but otherwise, she didn't get involved in the actual selling of coffee and food. Thanks, by the way, for the other day. Weiss looked up at Blake suddenly, frowning. What for? For giving Yang and I some time to be alone, she explained. She smiled. Oh, no problem. Is Ruby coming in today? No, she had a taekwondo lesson. Okay. Normally I wouldn't do this, but I'm gonna take a quick drink before I continue. Okay. Is that a weekly thing now? Weiss shook her head, passing her an empty cup. She's helping out with one of the junior classes. It's a one-off. Blake nodded, flipping it over to see what the customer had ordered. Hot chocolate. By the way, yeah, if you get a weird email about the Schnee masquerade, it's an invitation. I was hoping you, Ruby, and Yang would come. Blake blinked in surprise. Okay, I'll try to be there. Weiss smiled. Please do, she hesitated. Why would the email be weird? It's a little... Weiss trailed off, trying to find the words. It's, well, very formal. Ruby lay upside down reading a book, with Zwei lying across her legs, snoring quietly. It was the same one that she had been reading at the White Stag a few weeks ago. She was getting closer to the end. Maybe around 75 pages were left. But so much could change in 70 pages. Her heart had been broken by... by this author in 10 pages before, let alone 70. Ground Control is Schwartz Leader. Come in, Schwartz Leader. Can you give us your position? The voice crackled through Rolf's speakers and into his ears, very nearly startling him from the relative silence and calm of the flight thus far. He quickly shook out of his serene state, surprised and angry to find he had so easily allowed himself to blank out. Line of vision as he prepared to respond. He hadn't thought he would need to do so anytime soon. They were nearly back at base, returning from a long mission, escorting bombers to their new base on the Austrian border. Rolf was tired, drained, and running low on both fuel and energy. He could only guess his 3 accompanying squadron members were feeling the same. He fitted his mask in place to respond. This is Schwartz Leader, Ground Control. We are currently on Vector 173, heading 245. All seems well. Over. Thank you, Schwartz Leader. We have received reports of enemy fighters patrolling your area. Be on the lookout. Her concentration was broken as her phone vibrated. She blinked and then picked it up. No text from Weiss, unfortunately, but is that an email? She sat up, crossing her legs, opening the Gmail app. There was one new message from no reply. Schnee at Schnee and Co. Schnee, whatever. Strange. She opened it up and her eyes slowly widened. Schnee Company's annual Vital Festival Masquerade at the Schnee residence on September 22nd. The gathering's primary purpose is to celebrate the anniversary of the end of the Faunus War, hence it is expected that every guest's behavior will be appropriate for the occasion. Please wear formal dress, an easily removable mask, and present ID at the door. If you cannot attend, please notify Weiss or Winter Schnee as soon as possible. Kind regards, Schnee and Company. There are some things that money can't buy. For everything else, there's the Schnee and Company. Sorry. Ruby promptly fell off the couch, Zwei too, awaking with a surprised yelp. She regained her bearings after a few moments, rereading the email. Formal dress? Confused, she read the email again, then called out, Yang! The blonde poked her head around the door. Yeah, did you get a weird email from Weiss? Yang frowned, pulling her phone out of her pocket. Maybe I haven't checked. Ruby shrugged again. Formal dress. The other sister. She could have just sent a quick, hey, want to come to the Vital Masquerade at my place? Or at my place? Ruby wasn't listening. She was just vacantly staring into space. Formal dress. Why? Yang shrugged. Sounds fun, but the food will be good, too. Hopefully Blake's coming, too. Ruby finally voiced her thoughts. Yang, will I have to wear heels? Her older sister grinned. Yes. Ruby could have sworn if she hadn't been the total cinnamon roll she was. She glanced at... What? Oh, what? Sorry. Ruby would have sworn if she hadn't been the total cinnamon roll that she was. She glanced over at Zwei, who just cocked his head to one side. I wonder if Zwei could wear heels. Okay. Yang and Blake sat alone in the Faunus' dorm room. Piero was doing some extra study with John, but Blake had a feeling John was the only one who was benefiting. Well, in terms of study, Piero got something else entirely. Just finished marathoning the first half of the Lizzie Bennett diaries, abusing Beacon's free Wi-Fi. Well, free for students. It was a bit of a stretch to watch that much in one go, and Blake had asked Yang multiple times if she wanted to stop, if this was enough for her, but the blonde seemed to be enjoying it. When they hit episode 50, they fell back onto the bed almost with relief. Yang was staring at the ceiling. I think it's grown to the point where it feels wrong not to have that headphone in one ear. Blake grinned. We can rectify that and watch more if you want. God, no, we've reached 50. If we keep going, we'll be here all night. Is that really a bad thing, though? Yang rolled her eyes. Alright, let me rephrase that. I'll have been here all night, and we won't have talked. Much better. Did you get Weiss's invitation? Yeah, Ruby and I are going. You? Yep. Yang shuffled a little closer to the wall, giving Blake some more room. Do you think he'll go as a cat? Yeah, but wearing the bow. It is a Schnee ball, after all. You? I was thinking like a bear or something. Blake had her back to her. Yang grinned and took her hair in her hands. The fauna stiffened, her candy was going flat against her head. She was wearing her bow, but Yang noticed it becoming very crooked all of a sudden. What are you doing? I'm just braiding it, she laughed. Oh, okay. Yang separated it into 3 strands. She wasn't really sure exactly what yet. Blake's hair was really silky. A bit tangled, but silky. Yang? Yeah? I'm thinking of doing post-grad law if I do well with his arts psychology thing. Maybe I'll Dutch braid it down the side and put the rest in a bun. Good for you. I'm sure you'll kick ass. Blake was silent for a moment. But seriously, does it seem weird that I spent 4 years studying something totally irrelevant to whatever's coming next? I don't know. What would you do with a law degree? Would you practice? Yang asked, pushing her hand into her pocket to see how many bobby pins she had with her. No, I don't know. It was just an idea. I don't really know what I'm doing with my life. The blonde sighed. Me neither. I don't think I want to be a hairdresser. You're literally doing my hair right now. Yeah, but I don't want to spend my life being paid to do stuff with strangers' hair, she pointed out, continuing to play with the Faunus' hair. True. Yang bit her lip. I've tried the army, I've tried uni, now I'm trying bloody hairdressing. I'm not exactly the best person to ask. Does Ruby know? What's she doing with her life? No, she just wants to help people. What, so like in hospitality? I think she had something a little more romantic in mind. Fair enough. Yang grinned, securing the braid with a yellow hair elastic around her wrist. Maybe I'll just leave the rest in a side ponytail. It looks nice that way. You'll figure it out. Blake grimaced. Yeah, I hope so. Or we could just pull a Fiero and wing it. Blake frowned. Fiero? From Wicked? Never seen it. You should. We should. Yeah, let's do that sometime. They continued to lie there in silence, thinking. The conversation had brought if that conversation had brought to the forefront of Yang's mind something that she'd been ignoring for a long time. What was she actually doing with her life? She was 19, still living with her dad and sister, which she suppose wasn't that unusual, but it's not like she had a plan or anything like that. She wanted to get herself kicked out of uni. Damn it. Hey, Yang? The blonde blinked a couple of times as Blake cut into her thoughts. We will figure this out someday, right? What we're doing with our lives? I suppose we have to, but Blake bitter-lipped, I don't know, I'm just worried. It's not like you'll end up on the streets or anything. Yeah, but what if I end up stuck in a job I hate? She said, anxiety creeping into her tone. What if... Yang shuffled forward and gave her an awkward lying down side hug. You'll figure it out eventually. Blake sighed, lying there for a few seconds, then she sat up, gently lifting Yang's arm off her. But how? Yang sat up too, then grinned. What do you think? Their eyes met. Yang's were shining with mischief, while Blake just looked confused. What do you think? She echoed. The blonde grinned even more broadly. Come on, you must know what I'm going to say next. Blake frowned, then realized, and they both just started laughing. Is it truth universally acknowledged that Yang Xiaolong, in the face of an unanswerable question, will always come with the response, magic? And next is, it's chapter 5, or part 5, because this is, this is made weirdly or whatever. So, yeah, we're gonna have to wait until the next part to finish that off, or at least, go further in the story, but, we'll see what happens, so...